Hard Hat Uncovered.
Welcome to Hard Hat Uncovered, where our mission is to get safety professionals and teams to realize that making a change impacts me, making a difference impacts others, and making history impacts the world. I'm here with your host, Junior Gutierrez.
Hard Hat Uncovered. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode from Hard Hat Uncovered. We're coming to you live from the studios in Alexandria, Virginia. Woo-woo. Welcome back, Lieutenant Oates.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Glad to be back.
Welcome back, Mr. Hipple.
How's it going, guys? We're going to blow your minds with some stuff today.
Speaking of that, man, how'd them Steelers pull that off last night?
Greatest game on Sunday.
So depending on what day you're listening to this, so yesterday it was the Steelers and the Patriots, and apparently the Steelers paid somebody off.
And my team came out on top for like the first time ever against them Pats.
They're 8-2. The record's 8-2. Brady's 8-2 against the Steelers.
I know.
Yeah. So
he never
was a good win for him.
And then of course, how could I leave out my 49ers? Beat one of our arch nemesis, the Seahawks.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was a good game too, though. It was good to watch. It was fun to watch. I was glad that they beat them. You know, it keeps the playoff picture tight right now.
Yeah, I wonder how our cornerback felt for having to beat his old team.
Who? Old Richard Sherman.
Yeah,
probably felt pretty good about that.
You know, I bet he's thinking, it's because of me why these wins happen.
Yeah,
against these two teams.
Nick Mullins has been looking good though. Like, I know Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback there, but Nick Mullins is stringing together some wins over there.
Yeah, Jimmy. So if you're out there, please get well soon.
Jimmy G.
That's right.
All right. So we're going to be talking today about back safety in the workplace. And, just everything that comes along with it, how to prevent it. And if an unfortunate case were to happen, that it does occur on your job site, then just some of those things that you could do just to prevent future injuries or making that injury a lot worse. So,
and I know in my case, typically back injuries are the most common injury on the job site. That's been true on any project I've been a part of to date. And I'd say you two can probably say the same thing or say they're pretty high up on the list.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, and so, of course, one thing that we do as safeties, we love to look at numbers and stats and all that, right? So if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it talks about over 1 million back injuries, occur on the job sites, in the workplace within a year. So, and I think one of the biggest problems that comes along with that is that, like you said, they can last such a long time.
Right.
They can be reoccurring. Somebody can have, I can throw my back out, lifting weights today.
You lift weights?
I lift table weights.
Oh, okay.
Table weights. Come on. But, yeah, I could throw out my back today and be a little sore when I'm working in the morning. And then by lunchtime, can't even stand up, can't walk, can't carry nothing.
Right. And a lot of times they're so unpredictable. What you could have had this, degenerative disc disease from working your whole life, and all of a sudden it hits you. So, we're going to talk about some of the things we can do to prevent that kind of stuff and prevent it from coming on at work.
Right. Well, I think one of the main things that we need to look at is, a person coming into the construction industry, it's mostly male. A lot of guys is filled with a lot of testosterone, so they want to prove themselves. And especially on construction jobs, they're running out trying to pick everything up. I can remember as a first-year apprentice, I was on a job and I was out there picking up flanges and picking up pipe and stuff like this. And there was this guy that was about to retire that year. And he said, "Hey, let me tell you something." He said, "It's a machine to pick up everything that you're picking up. So stop." He said, "Because when you get my age, you won't have a back."
Exactly.
And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because I was pretty sore at the end of the day, but that was just part of me thinking that this is what I had to do to prove myself on a construction job.
Right, and you just hit the main point there. Most of these back injuries are chronic. It's not an acute injury that just happens.
Absolutely.
It's something over time, years in the construction industry, years in a trade of any sort, doing all that physical labor. You slowly beat down your back, and eventually, an injury can come on.
And that being said, if it's an acute injury, it's pretty bad. And if somebody's picking something up and they fall to the ground in pain, that's pretty bad.
Yep.
Because like I said, like you just said, most of them are chronic, so it happens over time. And when you get my age, you're wondering, why is your back hurting like that? Start thinking back to some of the stuff that you did when you were younger and you thought you were invincible. So it has to be the leadership that gets involved out of the gate. When a guy first gets into construction, let him know, hey, look, you know what I mean? There's ways to handle this material properly. It's ways to handle this and keep your back from being injured also. So.
And it's a mindset. I think that's something that, think about even some of the old cartoons and movies. Let's say, Flintstones. I remember as a kid watching these cartoons and even the depiction that they gave of these characters, that they could pick up these big boulders, what I mean? And so it's like even the culture around was that, hey, the mindset is that as men, or even women out there, is that we're superheroes and that we don't need the help of somebody.
Right.
I was on a job where we had a gentleman that, he was in his probably late 50s or something like that, and he's carrying a bag of bolts. And he twisted and ended up getting an injury in his back there. And, yeah, I looked at the bolts, and I could tell that it had to be pretty heavy. Mm-hmm. He said, it's got to weigh about 30 pounds. And I was like, there's no way. And ended up, and it was inside the box, the bolts were already bagged up. So I took the bag, and when we set it on the scale, it was 72 pounds.
Wow.
And so you have this older gentleman, not saying that older gentleman can't lift up anything heavy, but the fact is, so you got two things, right? So he's carrying 72 pounds worth of bolts, and then he now wants to twist to put it on the table.
Right.
And I don't care how old you are. I mean, I've been on jobs where we've had young guys in their mid-20s carrying what's the water bucket there, the igloo water bucket,
the water buffalo,
not the water buffalo,
the water cooler.
The water cooler. Thank you.
The water cooler.
I think I'm getting old here. I'm losing my memory.
What is that?
The water cooler. And I've had a young guy on one of my job sites that hurt his back carrying a water cooler, and then he went to go set it into the bed of the truck and threw it his back. So when it comes to back injuries, it's not biased. It'll take any age, any craft, any industry.
Right.
I mean, because it's not only solely secluded to the construction industry.
No, we could talk about back injuries in the office
Absolutely.
space, and just poor ergonomics or
Right.
movements of that nature.
Not being warmed up. That's why, people, when stretch and flex first came out, people frowned on it. Oh, well, now we're out here doing aerobics and yoga. And it's just like, now you can see that it really helps out a lot, because a guy will come on a job cold and get an injury. You know what I mean? From not, having his muscles warmed up or being loose. So that's another thing that you got to consider coming in the gate.
Yeah, so you're saying they didn't like doing the standing flamingo?
They didn't.
They didn't?
Yeah.
So the topic that we're hitting on now is just about the heavy lifting, right? I know a gentleman that lived in my house who was the husband of my wife and the father of my children. That was he went to go.
Well, you just blew my mind for a second. I'm like, what is going on in that household?
All right. We'll say it's me. So we had got some new furniture, and I was trying to get the lazy boy, the recliner, out to the side of the road because they were going to throw it away. And I'm trying to drag this lazy boy from the garage to the side of the street. Mm-hmm. And everything was going wrong, right? The recliner kept wanting to pop out.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, you know what, screw this. And I grabbed both sides of the and just started manhandling it. And I was kind of hunched over dragging this thing. And then when I stood up, I was done.
Yep.
I was done for about 2 days. That first day I had to lay on my living room floor because I couldn't even move it around. And it's not that the lazy boy was heavy. Well, I'm not. Lazy boy's heavy.
Yeah.
Right.
But the fact is I wasn't even lifting it. I was dragging it.
That awkward
and
position.
it was an awkward position, right, and everything. And so whenever I went to go stand up, I was done.
Yeah. So I mean, right there, one of the biggest things you did was you were working alone. Most sites, most construction sites, most jobs, they're going to require you to work in pairs, and that's for a good reason, so that you're not trying to manhandle something that big by yourself. You're always having that person to help, and we got to be able to ask for help when is needed. Mm-hmm. We can't just manhandle stuff and just think we can always do it and always be the person to get it done. We need to ask for help and start implementing situations or implementing work policies where we're always doing team lifts and we're working in pairs and we're having somebody help us.
Absolutely, but think about this, right? You might have a pair. You might have somebody working with you, and whatever you're trying to move might still be too heavy for the both of you. So don't think because it's two people, you know, you still can get it done. You know what I mean? Because you might go over that 50-pound limitation
Well,
per
like you
person.
just said though, like the older gentleman on your job site, there's machines to do that, young
move
man.
that,
you know?
right? But sometimes, you know, people, they don't think along those lines. They're like, oh, it's two of us. Oh, we can get this done. We could pick this up. You still go back to lifting 100 pounds per person. You know what I mean? But the thing might weigh 150 pounds per 300 pounds.
Right.
So
Yeah, and not even that. It could be something that's a cut up piece of plywood that's cut in a funny shape. You know, I've
Drywall,
seen-
plywood,
yeah, something
you know.
like that. And then all of a sudden, and let's just say the piece of cut up plywood only weighs about 25 pounds, but you have your arms extended one way. I mean, you're full wingspan out trying to hold this thing, and now you're walking across the job site, and a gust of wind comes through
absolutely.
and spins that on you.
That exact scenario when I was a roofer, you know, I was the cut man for a couple years, and I'd be cutting all the OSB on the scissor lift truck, finish cutting, carry it to where it needed to go. Well, I'm manhandling this 3/4 inch sheet of OSB across the roof. Gust of wind came, twisted me, and that's when you get those back injuries. You have that awkward position, and then a weird force comes, or a gust of wind or something, and it takes you off your course, and you get into that awkward scenario where you hurt yourself.
Absolutely. But what would you do in a situation like that? You know, would you hold on to the wood or would you drop it? You know what I'm saying?
It depends on the situation.
Yeah. Well, it should have started at the beginning. I should have just been doing it, lifting it across the roof with somebody else.
Right.
Is really what it came down to in that situation.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know. I've seen this video on YouTube where there's a guy, I don't know, up on like on a 5th-story building, and the wind blows him off, and he's holding this plywood, and it actually shoots him back into the 4th story. Now I'm thinking that's got to be photoshopped or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But I've seen that video before, and in that
He used it as a
scenario,
sail.
yeah, as that scenario, do not let go of the
Absolutely.
plywood.
You'd have kept going.
Yeah, I need to find that video, see if I can throw that in here
Yeah. Right.
somewhere. So now you got the injury. Now someone's injured themselves on the job, and since it's a back injury, you really never know. I mean, there's been times that we've had to take employees in to get X-rays, and the thing is, X-rays can kind of be deceiving when it comes to you know, soft tissue injuries and stuff, because the X-ray is going to show a fracture in your
Absolutely.
back or something of that nature, a crack or a break or anything like that. But when it comes to the soft tissue injury, there's no way to really tell in that X-ray.
Right.
And so, and
And your timeline for recovery is unknown at that point as well.
right, because all kind of factors, right? Just any pre-existing conditions. What's the health of the employee? What's the age of the employee? What type of work is this employee going to be doing? Is an employee going to follow a home medical program that's going to involve stretching every morning, stretching every evening, putting ice, hot compresses? You know, it's typically, you know how I am, and I'm a safety guy, and I'll still, you know what, I don't need to throw no ice on that. You know,
Yeah.
I still got to walk around the house like a young spring chicken.
Right.
You know, because
Absolutely.
I don't want no one to take my role in that house. So,
Right.
you know, we deal with the sprains, we deal with the strains, you know, but there's other things that come out there. There's herniated discs that can come. There's people that can tear muscles, tear ligaments, you know, stretch their tendons and not even realize it, because the back is it's so complex with everything that's involved. I mean, not just the muscles, but you have nerves and all of that are back there as well.
Right.
And so, and again, like Dylan just said, you don't know. I can't say, oh, Damon, you're going to be out for 6 weeks,
Absolutely.
because I don't know what's going to happen between now and those 6 weeks. You might heal in 2 weeks, you know, and you might be one of the fortunate ones that heal a lot faster. But for some of us old guys,
Right.
it's a 6 to 8 week deal of
Right, but
not
if you
doing
say
anything.
I'm going to heal in 6 weeks and I heal in 2, I probably won't say anything. I'll probably just take the rest of those 4 weeks. Say, yeah, man, yeah.
You
6
on
weeks.
light duty an
Right.
extra 4 weeks.
6 weeks, brother.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it. If it's a more serious injury, right? A herniated disc, a bulging disc, you know, pinched nerves or something like that. No telling. You could be dealing with an injury for a year, you know, a year and a half. I've been on jobs where some of those injuries did last 8 months, 9 months, and the employees were ready to get back to work because they were dying. They were just,
Right.
man, I got to work. I got to
Oh
move.
yeah,
I got to pick
I've
up a
had
hammer. I got to
multiple
do
employees
something.
like, I cannot be on light duty any longer. I'm ready to go back.
Yep, and they're ready. And there's times I've had to tell employees, stop. Look,
Yeah.
you're not going to, you know, you're not improving your situation by doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
You're slowing down the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now how do we fix those things? because we go out on the job sites and we understand, hey, look, you don't need to carry that piece of pipe. There's I don't know what you called it up north. I know we called them crickets, and they were grasshoppers.
Yeah, or dragon wagons we used to call them.
Okay,
Dragons.
yeah, where it's just two. You ever seen that, Dylan? So it's
pipe, yeah.
Yeah, it's just two wheels and basically almost like a catapult effect, whatever. And someone had to explain it to me. Someone had to explain it to you. Hey, that's the type of tool that you use to do that, so you don't throw out your back. Because even though the pipe might be a piece of 4-inch pipe, and in our mind it's not heavy, but you pick up a 6-foot stick of that thing, and it's pretty heavy.
It is.
One of the things we can do is educate the employees, right? We can educate them on proper lifting techniques. When you're using the right form, when you're not using the right form. Lift with the legs, not the back. There's all kinds of educational things we can do to be proactive in preventing these types of injuries.
Absolutely, and that should be done when the employee comes through the door. All right, through orientation. Not only should the safety person give them that message, but their foreman, general foreman, superintendents, those guys should be in place to let them know, hey, these are some of the things that we got to do. I'm not trying to slow you down. I'm just trying to make sure you're going to be all right at the end of the day. That's not happening. Then a guy goes out and he's trying to prove himself, especially a young guy that's never worked construction before, and he's out there trying to make an impression. One wrong step can end a career in a day. It's nobody's fault but to me, the leadership, because coming in the door, you got to tell a guy, this is what you got to do. Don't do this, do that. Don't do this, do that. You got to watch them. You wouldn't let your child that's 3 years old walk to the corner store by themselves. You know what I mean? You got to hold them by the hand and take them to the store. You can't just let them go out and think they're going to make it there and back with a possibility of nothing happening.
Yeah. And I will say that education and training is probably way down on the list. Junior, you can go ahead and tell us what number one is there.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this. Actually, before we move forward, I want to backtrack on something that Dane was talking about. Imagine letting your child do this. And what I wanted to touch on was I read an article one time, and it talked about how as babies, we are naturally taught, it's in our gene buildup, however you want to say it, to lift properly. And if you watch a baby, they'll squat down, back straight, and they'll pick something up.
Yep.
And they learn that, or we learn that as we grow up. We learn watching people bend over at the waist, pick something up. And so it's a learned habit that we have. It's a learned habit that throws us off, and before you know it, we have now turned what our natural instinct of lifting properly, we have now turned it into a bad habit. And the other point I wanted to touch on was you were right on point when you were talking about the leadership and the supervision. Typically, it's the safety professional that's given the orientation, and we're talking about needing to lift things properly and all of those things. But when it comes down to it, what we have to do is make sure that the supervisor is out there, that they're the ones out there that are saying, hey, look, this is how we need to lift this pipe. This is how we need to move this toolbox around. This is how we need to do this. This is how we need to do that. And the reason that is because who knows the work better? Who knows the work better out in the field than the supervisor? Because that's their task. They're the ones in charge of writing the JSA.
Yep.
They're the ones in charge of mitigating the hazards. They're the ones that are in charge of the oversight for their employees every day. It's not us as the safety guy.
Right.
We come out as that resource.
Oversight.
Yeah, oversight.
Because the supervision plans the work. As safety professionals, we don't plan the work. We're just making sure that the work is being done in a safe manner.
Correct.
Right?
I think another thing that falls on us, not just as the safety professional, but also as just the supervision that's out there. However, we've talked about in the previous podcast about the CEOs. We've talked about the foreman, the guy shoveling the asphalt. I think that everybody should be involved at every level and look at the job design. Why would we think about general industry in a warehouse, let's say like an Amazon, that they have to load stuff into a box every day, seal this box up, and ship it out. So if you look at their work structure, they're working off of tables.
Right, because you're eliminating them bending over to pick stuff up. You're eliminating that awkward position simply through job design.
I mean, can you imagine bending over and having to, even if it's 5 pounds, having to load 5 pounds of stuff into a box and tape it up every day, 1,000 times a day, 8 hours a day, 10 years of your life?
Right.
I mean, you're going to probably end up with a some sort of back injury at some point. If that's your job every single day, there's no doubt in my mind you will end up with a back injury.
Most definitely.
Yeah, something as simple as how we're storing the materials off the ground. That could be a key thing, but also the organization of the procedures of the workflow. So let's just say, is it something that we can build on a table and then move, as opposed to building it on the ground? Or is there a process that we can put in place that, hey, I'm going to build this on the table and hand it off to the next guy who's got to build it in place somewhere else, but making sure that flow is ergonomically correct,
right?
Or, however you want to say it, but that we are reducing or eliminating those exposures through the job design itself, or just restructuring how they got to do the heavy lifts. Let's say the gentleman I was talking about, that he was picking up 72 pounds worth of bolts, and that's how the box came. It came with that amount of bolts already in there. What if we're working with a manufacturer, or if we're working with our vendor, and say, hey, look, do not send us a box of materials over 50 pounds.
Right.
Separate them.
Break them down. We had 72 pounds, 36 pounds, 2 boxes. It makes a big difference. If you have that ability to work with a manufacturer or work with a shipper so that they can do that, it eliminates someone at your workplace having to bend over and pick up that 72-pound box.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the way that we're moving stuff now in this generation, and in this, I've heard this several times, this is the smartest this world has ever been, with all the technology, with all the knowledge that's out there. And one thing that's starting to really change is the composite of the material that we're using. Now you can, they're using these 3D printers to make casts.
Yeah. So I kind of think the hierarchy of controls, substitutions at the top. If we can substitute out a heavier material for something lighter, right there, that's the solution. That's designed into the job. That eliminates that heavy lift. So, for example, most buildings nowadays, especially commercial, are using metal stud framing, like aluminum metal studs that are just so much lighter than 2x4s. It's something simple, but we are changing material to a lighter material, but also a sturdier, stronger material in the long run.
Right.
There's going to be times that we absolutely can't. There's going to be some scenario. Let's say if we're talking about the NASA space shuttle, are we going to want to use a piece of
the cheaper the better.
Are we going to want to use a piece of wood where it's supposed to be a piece of magnesium or a piece of some type of exotic metal?
Situation.
Right. No, but when you can't do anything about that, I just think we got to go back to what we were talking about earlier. Making sure that we're using dollies, using carts, using the grasshoppers, like I was mentioning earlier. There's all kind of, there's pickers out there. There's, and these pieces of equipment, they're not cheap. So why would we let these pieces of equipment sit idle on our jobs when we're already paying for these jobs? Like I said, they're not cheap. It's not $20 a day to rent a crane, or $20 a day to rent a forklift or something like that. So
right, but on the flip side of that, spending the money to have the equipment is a lot cheaper than paying out claims and back injuries over the long run.
Absolutely.
If you really break it down, and I'll tell you, a lot of CEOs or owners of companies that have had to go through this will tell you the same thing, that it is worth it to spend the money on the equipment rather than pay for the injuries in the long run. Especially with back injuries, we keep talking about. You don't really know how long it's going to take someone to heal, so you can get back injuries up into the millions of dollars in claims.
Yeah. So David, think about being on a job. What's a scenario that you would think, or what's a reason why you would think, if we had a forklift sitting right there in front of us, why would we not use that to move a pallet of material, some pipe blind flanges? Why would we individually pick up each blind, walk it across the job site, as opposed to it's already on a pallet? Why wouldn't we use a forklift to move it?
Why wouldn't we use one?
Yeah. Well, what's some reasons you've heard?
The reasons that, the forklift, we don't want to bug the operator, or it might take, it might take them too long. It's just one of those type of situations that who's ever in charge, it's their mentality as far as moving materials around. But I've heard some everything. Well, the operators are busy and the fork truck's sitting there idling. You know what I mean?
I've heard it's a time thing. It'll take me longer to go get the operator than it is
to get on the forklift to move the material. You know what I mean? But all that goes back to planning, man. You got to plan everything before you do it. If you know you got material to move, then in the morning meeting where all of these leaders come together, there's an operator foreman in there. You can say, hey, man, you know, I need you to move some material for me first thing in the morning if you can, if your guy's not busy. That way he coordinates with his guy to meet you where the material is, and it takes all of 5 minutes to move it. But you'll get, instead of getting 2 or 3 apprentices to walk 8-inch flanges across the job site that weigh 50 pounds, 55 pounds. You know what I mean? It's just planning.
I've also heard this. You mentioned apprentices. I've also heard them say, "Oh, that's the apprentice's job to pick that up and carry
Right,
that
absolutely.
over there." You know, that's a bad excuse, but that's what some people use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and if you got to walk these flanges across an entire job, unless you're charging mileage on your shoes, you know,
It's not worth it.
55 cents every 20 feet you're walking or something
not
like
worth
that. Yeah, there's absolutely no reason to doing that, right? So I know we've talked about the types of lifts that we're doing, whether it's heavy, whether it's an awkward lift, a cumbersome lift. You know, how do the injuries, you know, what type of injuries come out of there, you know, and how do we prevent those things? But I think that going down the hierarchy, like we said, you know, substitution, elimination, you know, training and stuff like that. But it really comes down to, I think, is ultimately the person that's going to go do this lift, they got to make a decision, right? Mm-hmm. And there's times when I know when I'm about to lift something, I take that 1 second and I think, man, is that, you know,
Is it worth it?
Or when I grab it and I go to pick it up, you know, if I got a grunt when I'm picking something up, I got to really think,
Yeah.
Is this really worth picking up?
So I used to run a campaign, take 5 for safety, and it was just that same thing you're talking about right there, Junior. It's take 5 seconds before you start your task and ask yourself, is there a safer way? Is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? Really sit and think about it. Just taking that 5 seconds will make you force yourself to think about, you know what? There probably is a better way to do this than what I'm about to do. Or I am going to do it the best way possible.
Well, absolutely. But it still goes back to, I keep hitting on this, leadership.
Yep.
Your foreman, your GF, he has to be on board. Superintendent, everybody has to be on board as far as working safe, because sometimes, especially like as an apprentice or a young journeyman, when you go to say, well, let me do it this way or let's do it that way, then now you're the guy that's the troublemaker. Oh, he don't want to work. No, he's looking out for his safety. Mm-hmm. You know, he's looking for the better way to do it so he can avoid getting a back injury or something like
right.
that.
And I thought you brought up the most important point is pre-planning your tasks.
Absolutely.
I think pre-planning your tasks can eliminate injuries in 90% of situations. If you really think about it, plan it out before you start work and get the best possible way of completing your task.
Yeah. I was like, and I've been on 2 different types of crews. I've been on a crew where we planned everything out. Everybody had a mission. And then I've been on crews where it's like, this got to be done, go do it.
Right.
You know,
and which one was better?
Right. You know what I mean? Well, planning everything.
Right.
Because, you know, everything is in sequence. You know, everything's planned out. Everything's in order. But the person that tells you, hey, we got to do blah, 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 and go out and do it, it's always, that's the crew that you got to watch.
Mm-hmm. That's the crew you don't want to be on.
That's the crew that you don't want to be on.
I think as we continue to talk about this back injury, I think the next topic there, the next thing that I'm going to bring up right now is probably something that I know I see a lot with the big general contractors out there, or the super contractors, or in the general industry, some of these well-established companies that have built a safety culture throughout the years. But it has to do with stretching, you know, in the morning, a stretch and flex. Mm-hmm. I know we're still struggling with contractors out there that don't feel 5 minutes of stretching in the morning as a group is a valuable asset, or basically worth the money, because, you know, they look at, well, 5 minutes every morning, 5 days a week, you know, 30 days a month, 12 months out of the year, and then before you know it, oh, we're out $1,500. For the year.
Oh no.
No, but that same crew is over at that gang box drinking coffee, talking about what they did the weekend before.
Right.
You know, sitting around for 20 minutes, okay, and then going to work cold. You know what I mean? Instead of stretching and flexing for 5 minutes, loosening up, their muscles and whatnot. They're over there drinking coffee and talking about old times before they go to work.
And it can be as simple as that. As you're talking in the morning, stretch and talk. Exactly.
Right.
I mean, if they're going to do it anyways, just have them bend over, touch
Make
their
it fun.
toes, do arm circles.
And the thing about it
play
is,
some music.
especially dealing with like tradesmen, you got to make everything fun. If you come out like you drill sergeant, whoever,
ain't gonna work,
and try to get them to stretch and flex 1, 2, 3, play with me, they don't want to hear that. But if you go out there and you circle
take
up
it back
and
to
you
your
making,
army days, huh?
yeah, you go out there and you circling up and making jokes, laughing and talking, they begin to accept it more.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if you go out there like drill sergeant, whoever, and try to make them do something, or you come across like, this is what we got to do.
Major pain.
They're not going to want to do
Major
it.
pain.
Right. Absolutely. They're not going to want to do it. So it's about how you communicate to them too. I know that's not talking about back injury, but I'm just trying to give you steps on how to make things work and how to talk to your people to make them welcome you instead of wanting to push you away.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to know, what's this trade you're talking about that's standing around drink coffee anymore? Because I know as a pipe fitter, we were gung ho. Hey, right when the horn blasted.
Okay.
Electricians, but I don't know.
Hey, I'd get there 30 minutes early just to polish the tools before I started even working.
You must be talking about
absolutely.
plumbers standing around.
I don't know.
I know. I ain't never seen a pipe fitter standing
That's
around.
Right. We're an
Yeah, I don't-
electrician for that matter.
If that happens, they must have been imitating a pipe fitter.
Right.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
it.
They're trying to fit it.
And that's fake news.
Going back to, I was talking about as a baby, we're born with that natural instinct to lift, right? And then we take ourselves out of that mentality by watching adults, right? Or watching our older siblings improperly lifting or something like that. Now, I think that, and this is my opinion, I can't prove it, through any research or anything like that, but I think if every day, if we're having these stretch and flexes out in the field, if every morning, if we're teaching our guys out in the field, hey, this is how you properly stretch your arms, this is how you properly stretch your back or something like that, I think that can translate. And then now I'm going to start using that same form as I'm picking up something. And then I think we could eventually get our mindset back to, hey, this is how I need to properly lift this. But the thing is to do it subconsciously without even thinking about it. Now it's a natural thing, natural instinct as it was when we were, a year old.
Learning through repetition. Training yourself to lift the right way.
Yep. Or you could do it the nerd way, as I like to call it. And NIOSH has the lifting equation out there.
Oh man, do I love the lifting equation.
All right, let's hear it off the top of your head. Let's hear the equation.
Exactly. At one point in my life, I knew it, and it's about it's something you're not going to use out in the job. So I'll tell you that right now. It is out there. NIOSH does have a lifting equation that calculates how far away the material is from you. The angles you're going to have to bend over, the weight of the material, and it factors all these in, and it tells you kind of what you can lift in what position and the way you're twisting. But it's something we're probably not going to use on a daily basis. You're not going to figure it out using the NIOSH equation.
Well, I could tell you this, Dylan. It's not going to kind of tell you. It's going to tell you exactly to the 0.01% of what you can lift.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean,
kind of, sort of.
I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not walking around with the big IBM computer trying to figure all that stuff out, right? So that's
good.
why.
That's good to know for all you pipe fitters out there. When they tell you to lift something, say, hey, according to the NIOSH lifting equation, I can't lift that, and see what happens then. Right?
Yeah. Pull that one out.
You're not going to pull out the old NIOSH lifting equation card, are you?
Right. Absolutely.
I think as safety, as employers, as contractors, I think we could even take it one step further than that. As you were talking about earlier about hiring in, doing the orientation, I think there's even a pre-step before the hiring process. I think there's a process before they come on the job site is looking for things like, hey, is this individual fit for what I'm going to ask them to do? If it's an individual that weighs 90 pounds soaking wet, are we going to ask them to pick up 49 pounds of material every single day, all day long? Maybe. I don't know. But that's the whole point of this fit for duty is to see, because you might get a big hurly-burly man that weighs 250 pounds and not even capable of lifting 20 pounds every day because of his previous back conditions.
Right. It's something we used to do when I was climbing cell towers. Before I even started, we had to do a crane physical. And basically, we just had to go through a series of tests to prove that you were fit for duty, prove that you were physically strong enough to do the job, because you're climbing 300 feet in the air on a daily basis, having to support your own body weight. Some of the things we did were we had to lift 80 pounds, we had to climb a ladder, we had to do push-ups. So there was all these physical requirements that you did pre-employment to prove that you were fit for duty, that you were able to complete the task that you were being hired to do.
And I know it gets into tricky situations, right? I know that there's disability acts, and I know there's things that protect employees or potential employees from things of that nature. But we're not talking about things like that. What we're strictly talking about is, hey, is this person going to get hurt because of what we're asking them to do? Is it realistic to ask these individuals do what the tasks are? And if not, sometimes you got to make the tough decision as an employer and say, I can't do it. I cannot do it. And it's not because I'm looking out for myself when it comes to lawsuits or anything like that. It is 100% I am looking out for you as an individual. As a human being, I legitimately do not want you to get hurt on my job site.
Right.
Because again, we're going to make full circle because we don't know what an injury could do to somebody. There's injuries that I've seen where people have had to have back surgeries and things like that, and they're out. They're out for a year. They're out for 2 years. And depending on their age, let's say if they're, in their 60s, no telling. No telling. Again, all these cases are on a individual person, and there's so much factors that you have to take into consideration that you will never know until it's too late, and that's once the injury has occurred. So just wrapping up all these things that we just discussed, it's common things that are happening on the job site, and I hate to even call it that it's a common thing.
I know.
But back injuries, I mean, that's one of the leading things out there for injuries, workman's comp claims and stuff like that. So I hate to say that it is a common thing. I wish we could call back injuries these one-off items, these unicorn incidents,
right,
if you will.
But they're not, and it's our job to prevent them and give people the right tools, education, training, job design to be able to prevent them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So again, don't go out there like Major Payne. What was the cadence again?
1, 2, 3, stay with me.
Nailed it.
Yeah. That wraps up podcast number 3. That puts it in the books there. And I do want to say thank you to Trinity Safety Group. They were our first sponsors in this. And I'm going to post a picture online, and you're going to see all the new gear and all the equipment that we got. We feel like professionals here. So watch out, you other podcasters, because we're going to be catching up.
We don't feel like professionals. We are professionals now.
Professional grade.
We are professionals. Before you know it, we're going to have people in here, bringing us coffee and fruit in the morning and bagels.
We do. His name's Damon.
1, 2, 3, stay with me.
All right, David, I'm sorry. David, Dylan, why don't you close us out with our mission statement?
All right, everybody. Remember, making a change impacts me, making a difference impacts others, and making history impacts the world.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned for our next podcast when we'll be coming to you live again from the Hard Hat Uncovered Studios in Alexandria, Virginia.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Hard Hat Uncovered. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube at Hard Hat Uncovered.